it. So I wanted to use my favorite writing technique, which is speaking, because writing is a pain in the ass when you don't know what the point of it is. But that might be like a stylistic limitation of mine because I don't know where to start and where to stop things. I never know where to start and stop things. Or maybe that's just an insistence that I don't like feel like starting things or feel like stopping things, so I kind of like say, yeah, no, like, oh, let's go outside and do this video or something. But that's kind of like the liberating aspect of it, right? You know? Now, I wanted to introduce a mode of kind of like analysis, you know? Some sort of polemic here, right? If you can hear me over talking heads, right? And that's not a term of analysis. There's no word for this, but it's like that person? No. You think I'm talking to that person? And it's more complex than saying like, oh, don't discriminate against people, but it's more like, you know, in the first place, you know, even if we decide not to discriminate against people, we're still sort of discriminating, right? But then, oh no, talking head stopped. Then, even let's say, under the assumption that, you know, you can be all pally and know your tastes all to the best extents, then there's still this anxiety. Oh, was it the right things that, you know, inform my tastes and the actions I make? Am I a good person? And shit like that, right? And am I doing this video correctly? Oh no, is it stylistically correct? And it's like, you know, nowadays we have to get over this sort of postmodernist sort of idea that, like, you know, oh, people won't like this, you know, they have different agendas, and what if I say something wrong, and I think things wrong, and I'm a pervert, or I'm like, you know, I'm a negative Nancy, I'm, you know, all negative, and I only have bad things to say about people, and I don't like other people, and I don't like hanging out with people, or stuff like this, and like this solidified, crystallized identities, where you kind of, wait, I gotta get my internet up. Yeah, there you go. That's lesson one of filming on computer, is that, one, you should like get the full loop in there, and two, you should get a hotspot on that shit. Okay, now this is a miracle of modern technology, ain't it? Right? Oh shit. So then, what is it all for? That's kind of the question, right? You know, why try? You know, why, you know, like, proceed, you know, try not to fail? You're not trying not to fail. Who cares about failure? Or who doesn't care about failure? Oh, you're not trying anything, and don't try. Bukowski, right? And in either case, you know, you're just wiping the slate clean, you know? Keep it, you know, people are obsessed with, like, you know, how they taste to other people. And then they're like, oh, what about this foam on top, right? And then, like, they drink it and they're like, oh, that foam is, you know, good or bad or something like that. And then you're like, oh, but you didn't judge it correctly. The foam on top, that's my whole personality. No. And then, like, you know, we're like, we have superficial relationships with other people. They're not actually, you know, judging me. They're not actually seeing me for myself. And it's like, you know, this sort of distance, psychological distance from other people, because you're like, they don't have the same experiences, they're not trying for the same thing. But, you know, nobody's trying, you know? Nobody's trying. fundamentally, nobody's trying. You know, we might be trying to like, oh, you know, they're doing this for that person or the other person, but the core aspect of it is that you try for yourself, you try for other people, you kind of create these identities that you kind of like form around, and you kind of insist on it, and you make habits, but then the habits you make towards yourself are, you know, more obvious. The habits you make towards other people are less obvious, because usually the habits we make towards other people, right, are a bit more, you know, generally viewed sociologically, generally viewed, you know, as, you know, right or wrong, versus towards yourself, where it's always like, you know, it's your own judgment at the end of the day. And, you know, I can feel a bit like, oh, am I doing this right or wrong? People are saying act against my nature and stuff like that, right? And like, I've been told to act against my nature too. You know, what is my nature? What do I do, right? You know, oh, restrain this or restrain that, but it's not even really like the intensive property of something, but it's the extensive property of it, where it's like, you know, it's not what you are doing, it's what you aren't doing. So if you're like my nephew Keanu, right, and you want to go upstairs, right, to play with your boat, your toy boat, then you go downstairs, and then you try to go upstairs again, but your mom gets mad at you, and then you start crying, and you know, like, is that good? Is that bad? That, you know, societally, you wanted something, and you had it taken away from you? I mean, I don't know. Who's to know? Who's to say? You know? But you have to kind of like get over it, because there's always going to be that stuff where we live in a society, and like, you know, people don't always agree, and so you kind of have to get over it, right? And, you know, even if you're like a bad person and you're the reason, you know, like, for that, you know, you'd be sorry for that, but there's no kind of the absolution and stuff. There's no kind of way you can sort of serve a jail sentence for a crime that nobody cares about, right? Like, you can make amends, I guess, but making amends itself sort of imagines what you did to be more important than it actually was. You can say sorry and all that stuff, but it might not actually, you know, there's this whole complicated thing with, you know, are you genuine? And so, at the end of the day, it really only matters whether you think you're genuine, whether you think you're genuinely making, like, remunerations for the stuff. But let's kind of, oh god, there's a fucking bug on the ground. Shouldn't have walked barefoot. So, in this scheduling of everything, of like tastes and stuff, I feel like perhaps, you know, so Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil also goes against like truth, and I feel like it also goes against like aesthetics to a certain extent. Therefore, good and bad, true or false, I think that should also go against aesthetics, because they're implicitly organized in that, you know, good and bad. But this whole swell of, you know, influences on your behavior is relevant, irrelevant, I don't know, postmodernism, right? You know, because we'll never have something where everything agrees, and with that interactions and happenstance, we'll never know if this is the place, if this must be the place that we have to be. We just know we're animals searching for answers, Um, searching for a home. What's the lyrics of this song I'm currently listening to? But you can't overthink it. You'll naturally make attachments like a dog does too. And that's why they call it puppy love, probably. But, man walking with computer towards park. Self-perception. Oh, I look ridiculous. Ha ha ha. I have so much anxiety. How I look to other people is so weird. And then meanwhile, they're just like standing and being quiet, and they're like, oh no, God, they must think I'm so weird. And then if you're acting actually weird, and then people think you're weird, it's like, it's a consequence. You know, if you say something weird, maybe they kill you? I don't know. Maybe they like slowly torture you to death, and you become traumatized after escaping, and then you have PTSD, and you're like, I should have never made that decision, you know, right? But it's like, who cares, you know? No matter, like, you know, you were raped, you were murdered, you were stolen from, you know, it happens. So, you know, you can have an impact of something on you, right? And this is all itself very first worldy, because none of this has ever happened to me. I'm like very not close to violence, right? Ooh. But then again, many people aren't like close to violence. Many people have like a normal situation. Outside of like rich areas, and even in rich areas, there's violence. But in poor areas, there's also places where there's less violence. Violence and threat and poverty are sort of relative phenomena. To an extent. You know, people go hungry and stuff like that. So, what am I to think about this? I don't know. It all sums up to like 23.8497654 3 12 called while he flying. Oh God. And like anyone trying to tell you it sums up to anything more than that, like, oh, you know, detachment brings suffering. Detachment from what? You know? What is there? There's nothing. People? There's nothing there. You know? Or like romance or stuff like that. No, just do whatever you want. There's no real like thing. There's no guarantee either. So like, why are you here? I don't know. That's the best answer. And I might sound like I'm saying something important, but I'm not.